Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast brought to you by Literal Humans. As always, I am Paul David, your host, founder and CEO of Literal Humans. I'm joined by a fantastic guest today, Mijke van Ballegooijen, who's the CEO of BYBORRE. Mijke, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Great being here.
So just by way of introduction, we're talking about pioneering textile innovation, and your company's based in Amsterdam, which is a city I have much love for. So y'all are redefining how fabrics are designed, produced, and valued. And I'm going to jump into your introduction here, but you've got a background that's spanning sustainability and brand leadership. We love branding. We're going to talk a little about that. Mijke is steering BYBORRE through a new era of responsible textile production, one that combines data, design, and transparency to help global brands make better material choices. Since their founding in 2015, BYBORRE has collaborated with the names like some small ones, BMW, Adidas, Gore-Tex. You may have never heard of them, may not have their stuff, but they're building a reputation for open innovation and radical transparency. Under Mijke's leadership, the company is reshaping sustainable manufacturing with intuitive global digital design tools that enable creators to develop textiles entirely from scratch, alongside a dedicated textile room, quote unquote, where existing fabrics can be explored and customized to suit any vision. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. I'm going to get your name right, and I apologize about that. But yeah, first thing, let's jump in. Explain the landscape here. So what would you say is broken about the current global textile industry, and how is BYBORRE trying to fix it? Tell us how you're dealing with this massive issue. The textile industry is often cited as being one of the most polluting in the world, responsible for up to 10% of global carbon emissions. What do you see as the most systemic problems that need fixing here?
Yeah, so maybe just first the textile industry, it's like a beast, but what it basically is, it's a very fragmented market. When you have, for instance, fiber, they might be spun in one region, dyed in another, and finally knitted or woven in yet another region. So materials and textiles, they often travel like thousands of kilometers before they become an actual final product. And since it's also one of the, actually the last industry to be digitalized, it's relying on very outdated systems. So the combination of a very fragmented market with outdated systems, you can imagine that transparency is incredibly difficult. Besides that, and indeed you're already mentioning it, it has a huge environmental impact. Textile production has a huge impact actually on the environment. So traditional processes, they use a lot of water, energy, chemicals, and often in regions with very weak regulation. In addition to that, there's a high dependency on virgin materials like cotton. And also, in addition to that, it relies heavily on overproduction. Basically, how it goes is a lot of companies, they already develop a collection months before they go live. They produce it, then they try to sell it, and then they think, what are we going to do with what's left over, right? So if you look at the landfills, and I'm sure you heard all about it, 7% of that is actually textile. There's a lot of, let's say the textile that we produce, about between like 50 and 70% ends up in these landfills. So this is enormous. Basically, if you think about it, the whole waste is built into the system. Now, and you can imagine what an impact that has on overproduction and the environment.
Yeah.
Finally, if you think about it, the biggest impact you can actually have on the environment is when you take certain design choices in the beginning. So 80% of the impact is determined by the design up front. I mean, there are companies today that are becoming more aware, and they basically tell their design teams, these are the requirements. And only if you start there, you can actually have an impact. However, you can imagine with these fragmented systems and the outdated systems that they're working on, there are hardly any tooling that facilitate this process, and that actually gives very clear criteria for design. So I would say those elements together make it a very difficult beast to improve.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to learn more about. We hear about these buzzwords of sustainable fashion, and then we see things in the news about these different companies not really being so sustainable. And BYBORRE, you call yourselves an innovation platform for responsible textiles. So, want to really dig in, kind of like understand what does that mean in practice, and talk to me about your partners. You work in sportswear, you work in automotive. Where do you see the biggest appetite for change and who's getting it right?
It's true, there's a lot of greenwashing. I guess we could fill our entire podcast on that topic. But if we could bring it back to BYBORRE, basically what we do, what responsibility for us in practice means is that we do only on-demand production. Now, in the fashion, that is often said already, that's a bit more common in fashion. In the interior industry, also everybody says, oh, your couch is on demand, right? So you're even willing to wait a little bit for your perfect couch. But if you would ask them where the textile comes from, I can tell you 24 hours before they deliver it to you, they call me. Why? Because they call me. So the only way I can deliver the textile is if I have it on stock. So all these companies that say they have on-demand couches, I can tell you it's on-demand until the textile, and we just discussed how polluting the textile actually is. So talking about greenwashing, that's one problem. So we only produce on demand.
Just real quick on the on-demand thing, because like I think as a buzzword for customers, it's like, oh, it's on demand, so it's fine. Like I've I'm not costing anything because it's just I'm ordering it and then it's being produced. How much of truly producing on demand do you think sort of ticks the box of, or ticks many boxes of reducing, that footprint? So like how much of it is just actually being on demand versus other levers that we can pull to be more actually sustainable? Because it strikes me it's probably a lot, but maybe it's very little. Does that make sense?
If you talk about the interior industry, I can tell you that from a textile perspective, 99% is not on demand. So it's a very big amount. I would love to know how much stock all these textile companies have in their warehouses.
Right.
I can tell you that's a big secret in the industry,
Right.
because if you tell how much stock you have, you're doing a couple of things wrong, right? So it says something about your performance, but also about your waste. So it's very difficult to find out. But I know that they're all available within 24 hours. So something is going wrong there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, people revealing, and there's a piece about transparency here. So if you say you have this much stock on hand, that kind of shows people what you are or are not selling. But also it shows us that, some of this waste, some of this unsustainable stuff has already been created, right? Like it's already sitting there, so it's like, there's only so much we can do to prevent. It's just sort of like, how do we better use what's on the floor? And maybe, try to go more on demand in the future is kind of what I'm hearing. But yeah, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, exactly that. Yeah, and then besides the on-demand production, which is basically behavior change, but I'm sure we'll get back to that later. It's longevity. So it's actually the quality of the textile. And I think that is also very, very important topic, because if you want to use textile in public spaces, it needs to reach all these requirements, right? From a fire retardancy and a billing, etc. In order to reach these targets, you cannot use recyclable yarn. So bio-based yarn, they will not reach those standards. So any company that says we are sustainable and we use sustainable yarn, you could ask if that's really true. And that is immediately a big challenge, because that basically means we still use yarn which is not recyclable. The technology simply doesn't exist. So that is something that is a big thing in the market. And I try to be as transparent as possible about that. And people say I'm being too transparent, but I rather tell the truth.
Too transparent.
And therefore we as a company, we say, okay, the most important thing at this moment is actually longevity, because then you don't replace it. So let's make the best textile that you can use the longest as possible, so you don't actually replace it. So that is the second thing we do besides the on-demand production. And then the third is, of course, our textile passport. So we were one of the first companies, we introduced it 7 years ago, to be as transparent as we can be. And I can tell you, we don't know everything about the textile that we produce. So I would say those are those 3 points. And then, of course, our platform, because our platform actually shows what we know about the impact of your design choices on the environment. So for instance, if you choose a certain composition, it will show how much water it's used, how much energy, how much CO2. So that designers actually know what the impact is of the design choices they take. And that's basically what we introduce with our software platform. So you ask me who has the biggest appetite for change, right? Well, I would say that is any customer we work with that values the combination of high performance, responsible production, and aesthetics. We actually are working in different industries. Like you mentioned, we work in the fashion industry, but we also work in the mobility and we work in the furniture. And actually, there are customers in all three verticals basically that are interested in that combination. And I think that combination is very important. And if I may, and I heard that other people do it too, it feels very unnatural for a Dutch, but I'm going to brag for 1 second because we had 2 prizes this year. We got a prize from the International Textile Manufacturing Federation, where we got the award for innovation and sustainability startup. And we also got an award for being the coolest Dutch brand. Now, I laugh about it, but what it shows is basically it's about the front end and the back end. And that's really what we I believe that that's the formula for success. So you need to work hard on getting your data right, creating transparency in this industry. But it's not all stick. You also need to have the carrot. You need to have beautiful products to prove it. And I believe that it's the combination of both that actually changes industries and creates movement. And that's why I really liked it that we got those 2 in 1 year. And it also says something about the customers that want both parts that are interested in our product.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, we talk about this a lot, but like companies are always trying to build a moat, as they say, around their product. And like, at the end of the day, customers just loving your product is the best moat, right? Like I say that as a marketer,
Yes.
I can, if you give me a product that is crap, like I can do my best, but it's just really hard. So I'd rather, startups really focus on just nailing their product, and then it becomes way easier to market and to, ship around. So really appreciate that. And I think that's a place where marketers and growth strategists can be a bit more humble and just like, hey, like, yeah, if the product's good, you don't really need me as much, and I think that's kind of where things are moving a bit. So speaking of product, that I sort of asked you this already, but yeah, I would love to just kind of dig into how the technology is transforming textile design and production. Talk to us about digital sampling. What benefits does it bring? Why is it better than physical prototyping?
So let me tell you a little bit about the founders of BYBORRE. BYBORRE was founded by Borre and Arnoud in 2015. So next month we celebrate our 10 years. And Borre is designer. When he started BYBORRE, he felt, I cannot actually translate my designs into textile, and I want to be able to do that. So he actually started working in a mattress-ticking company where normally they use white yarns, right? You're sleeping on a mattress with white yarns probably. And he added different colors. And then this crazy textile came out of the machine. And his co-founder Arnoud was really impressed, and he said, "This is so cool. Let's make this work. And let's create beautiful textiles." Now, so that's how it started in 2015. So actually it's, I would say, design and creativity at the core. But then when they started entering the market, they found out that the industry is very closed. So that's where the mission came in very soon. From, oh, this is such a bad industry. We need to disrupt it. We need to make it better. And at the same time, they also realized it's very inaccessible. And what they wanted to do is to make textile industry accessible to designers. And also to actually be able for any designer to create beautiful textiles that we were creating. So that's where they started the software platform and actually digitalize the knit technology that they developed. So basically what our platform does today is that you can upload a picture of your dog into our tool, and then our software translates every pixel of your design into stitches. So the software actually develops a knit file that can steer any mattress-ticking machine in the world. And why I think that's so cool is that they actually use existing infrastructure to create this very beautiful textile. So if you talk about transportation, you can actually knit our textile in any knitting mattress knitting machine anywhere in the world. So that is just in short a bit what our software does. Then you mentioned indeed the sampling. So what we did is in the design software, you can visualize any design you have. So it makes it very easy to design different patterns. And where in the past, or a lot of other companies, knit it out, right? So they're actually producing to see what it does. And our software can make that digitally visible. So you actually have a lot of reduction in waste just in the sampling process. And then, of course, thirdly, the transparency on the impact of your design choices on the environment, which is basically at the beginning, which has a huge impact on the end product.
So AI is a big elephant in the room. It's, entering in the creative process. We're seeing this in the agency world, obviously, massively. How do you ensure that, this technology enhances rather than replaces, human creativity? And what is the role of AI in sort of the production, digital sampling process and just across the board in your industry?
Now, generally, we use it at this moment just to do faster coding and also to reduce repetitive tasks. That's basically the main items we use it for. However, what in the future and what we're currently looking at is, for instance, coloring of designs. So what we do is we have actually a smart stock of colors. And because we use multiple colors for every textile, you can do color blending. So basically means that with a couple of colors, you can make incredibly many colors. And for that, of course, you can use AI very well to organize, to advise, to recommend companies, customers, how to optimize their coloring. Just as an example. So this is definitely things where it can enhance. We have like a lot of ideas still on how our software can be improved in user friendliness and also in, for instance, having all the regulations that are constantly changing worldwide proactively in your tooling, so that also already in your design phase you say, okay, Denmark, these are the requirements, this is the impact, that means you need these yarns, it means you need to this composition, and for all that you can use AI. So I think for our particular case, it can bring a lot of value.
That's great. And then just jumping over to kind of your growth strategy. It sounds like you've got, really solid product, and I want to understand, what it takes on your end to drive kind of a mission driven, design company without losing its creative soul. How are you thinking about growth? Are you raising? How are you staffing your growth function? Talk to me about like the buying cycle and just your overall growth strategy.
Yeah. So overall, I think that I believe in creating aligned autonomy. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but aligned autonomy basically means that everybody wants to have their space to be creative and to optimize the usage of their talents, right? But if everybody would do that just like, craziness, then everybody would go any direction. So I think that the way I do it is that I always try to make it very clear where we want to go to and then specify who is accountable for what. And that means that the creative is accountable for the physical collection, right? So I can have an opinion. I have opinions about everything, but I'm not a creative in that sense, right? So by just really accepting that that person decides how it's going to look like, that gives enough freedom for that person to excel in their talents. So that is, I think, what I believe, that if you want to scale and you want to keep all the talents that are needed to be successful, it's only through delegating accountability and decision making power.
Yeah. And talk to me about obviously you mentioned the financial side of it as well. So how has that been for you all? Are you all raising? Are you bootstrapped? What does it look like to kind of fund the growth that you want to see?
This is a whole different podcast. We recently did a financial round, and I had an advisor, and he told me, "You're almost like a stock market." How do you say it? Company, because we have so many investors. So we have a combination. I mean, it's a typical startup journey, I would say. So we started with a handful of friends and family. Then we got a couple of angel investors in. We got some debt from regional organizations. And then we got a Series A, where the first bigger investor stepped in with a couple of bigger angel investors. And then we had a Series B, where we raised even more money. And we also got a bigger debt with the bank. So basically, we have quite a big cap table. And over 10 years, that also becomes a bit much to handle. So we recently agreed that, let's say, all the first investors and the angels would go into a stock. So we now have 4 big investors and 1 stock.
And that's really interesting. That's a very interesting, different journey from what we typically hear. But in ways it mirrors, what I think a lot of folks go through: friends and family, angels, and then you get into debt and you get into, sort of VC raise. Would love to hear a bit more
So
too
what is
about.
different then?
Well, the length of it, this, the spread of it. I think a lot of companies don't always make it through even to Series A or Series B. So, I mean, congratulations. I think the mix of angels and VC, I think, is really interesting. The size of the cap table, I think, is quite interesting. And not everyone takes on debt. I think we've taken on debt, and we really like debt as a vehicle because it kind of puts you on the hook to kind of, earn your way out of it and pay it back. A bit different, but you still keep your equity. So yeah, you've kind of got a little bit of everything, which is really, really interesting.
Yes, it's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, that's fascinating. Would love to hear too, like, how are you thinking about growth going forward? So you've raised this funds. How are you staffing, your growth and marketing strategy? Who are you selling to? How are you convincing them to buy? I want to kind of understand that more.
Yeah, so maybe good to just explain a little bit that when we did our last Series B, we did it on a new strategy. So basically, the first 8 years of our existence, we focused a lot in on the fashion market. But we found that fashion in itself, it's very fast. It's very difficult. The quality of our textile was actually too high for the fashion industry. So we started working with a furniture brand, and that actually became a very good cooperation. And then we realized, hey, the interior industry fits us much better because there's much more focus on longevity, for instance, and the quality of textile. But to go from fashion to interior is a huge strategic shift, right? So basically, we started doing that. That was just before I came in. Was the decision taken? But that shift was not an easy shift. So we had mostly fashion people working for BYBORRE, whereas the interior industry is completely different. So I would say we did a very big pivot, meaning that we reduced a lot in organization. We hired a lot of new people. We actually redefined our proposition. And it's about a year ago that we launched ourselves in the architect world and also decided to really go only on demand production and to really, really go back to the core, back to what we're good at, not produce too many initiatives or ideas, and just focus on the beautiful textile and the mission that we have. So if you do that, especially after you had a Series B investment, that means also taking one step back and really reviewing the whole thing. Now, we finalized that now, and we launched ourselves last year in the architect industry, and that has been a very big success. So that is really fantastic.
Yeah.
There's, of course, a lot of need in custom textile. Hotels, office spaces, they all like to have their DNA translated into unique aesthetics. And so yeah, there's a clear product market fit. So I would say we focused a lot on the Netherlands, and there, yeah, we are quite known now and doing really well. And that immediately shows that it's too small.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
where we are now is that we're the Netherlands, yes. So where we are now is that, that, I know you know that, but we Dutchies, we think the Netherlands is a big country.
It's a great country.
But yes, but so now we are really focusing on internationally. So how we do that is we have a commercial team at our headquarters in Amsterdam, but we are now building an agent network internationally where we really identified core markets that fit our brand and our mission and our aesthetics, which is of course very important. And we're building this agent network in these countries, and we take a very focused approach. So in the interior, there are a lot of brands and a lot of architects and a lot of designers, but to make the really strategic choice for the right designer, the right brand, and then a couple of very good architects, that has proven to be very successful also in the Netherlands. So that's how we want to approach it from, let's say, a growth perspective.
Hmm.
Now, of course, and maybe just to go a little bit further into your question in general on the growth, is that how I look at it is we are a textile company, yeah, because we literally produce textile, and we're a tech company because we have developed this platform with this software and a lot of possibilities that we are still working on. So what we want to do now is we basically, our textile company is the user for our platform. So the use case, because only if you understand really the difficulties that an industry is facing, you can solve it, right? So basically, now that it's only been a year that we really understand what are the requirements from a governmental and environment perspective? What are the issues that this whole industry has to deal with lead times and Excel files and fragmentation and silos? And we're taking all that and developing that into our platform. So that actually in the future, you could ask yourself, should we actually produce textile? Or can we be the platform that facilitates textile production anywhere in the world with our knit file, steering, mattress-ticking factories worldwide?
Got it. Yeah, and that's interesting because I mean, it sounds like too you're going through this larger shift. You're shifting from being kind of a founder-led creative studio to more of a scalable global platform. And I'd be curious to understand like how as CEO you're keeping that purpose alive while also steering the business into a new phase of maturity. Kind of understanding how you honor the company's creative DNA. But also building the operational and commercial structures needed for that long-term growth. You mentioned the founders before, and that's like a tricky, sort of straight to navigate. So I'd love to hear how you're thinking about that, how you're balancing that.
I think if you have a very strong mission, the leader is less relevant. Borre and I, we find each other on the mission. So if we have discussions and we don't agree on certain things, we always come back to the mission, and that's the same. And it's very strong, and it's strong for everybody that works for and with BYBORRE. So I think that is the starting point, and it's really honestly at BYBORRE very easy.
I love that.
Like, I think what you're also referring to is a culture. Founder often has like a real big impact on the culture of a company. And how do you keep that DNA while growing? So what I always like to do is really have a look at, okay, what are the basic needs of any human being, right? Which is need to grow and to add value, and a need for belonging, to belong to a group, and also the need to decide yourself. So the autonomy. And then I have a look at, okay, what's the DNA of a company? What's the DNA of BYBORRE? And that together with the team, we developed our own core values. And for me, core values is not something internal. It means that if we stand for that, it's everywhere. It's for anybody that deals with us. So for instance, one of our core values is empowering through accessibility. Now, that has to do with, again, how do you organize for aligned autonomy so that you can grow, but have very clear accountability in the company. But it's also our software platform, right? We empower designers and we give them access to the textile industry. So it comes with everything we design, and every experience we design or digital feature that needs to be in mind. That's where we stand for, and that's the experience that we want to give to our employees, suppliers, or customers. Same is being a reliable source. For us, reliable source means that you're transparent and you're honest and you're integer. So we need to be that to our employees. We need to be clear about what they can expect. We need to take care of their growth. But it also means for customers that we're transparent about what we do. So our textile passport, and we keep our promises. So I think if you have a very strong mission and very beautiful products, a clear product market fit, and then like a structure built around the needs and values of a company, you can actually grow that.
Yeah, I mean, you say it like it's so easy, but no, I mean, I think that's great. That's great guidance, right? Like it's hard though. It's hard to do that. I think a lot of companies, they struggle with one, growing past the the nature of the founder, and I see this in my own company, right? Like all the mistakes and challenges that we make, that comes from me. That's my blind spots and my lacking. And so how do you build a system and a culture and values that can move you through that, past that, help you grow from that? And then also, I think the product stuff, the product market fit is really, really key. So, and I love the mission too. Like if everyone's grounded in the mission, we can always turn back to that and say, okay, how do we align towards that? Even if we feel like there's friction between two people, that's great. That's great. So tell me what's the inspirational quote that's stuck out to you in your journey in tech?
I would say the inspirational quote is question all the rules.
I like
And
that.
I personally live by that because I've been part of many different bubbles, being first a corporate profile working for an airline, then a CEO among founders,
Okay.
a corporate among entrepreneurs, a woman around a lot of male tech leaders. And I found out that basically every bubble believes in their own truth.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important to continuously challenge the rules. But in addition to that, I think actually tech in itself brings most value when it questions all the rules.
Absolutely.
So I really like to be in that space and to see, okay, where can we add value by continuously asking.
Great. Well, we'll run you through the rest of the questions while we got you. We'll do them in reverse. So who's a literal human that you want to shout out that's been integral to your career journey?
So I'd say it takes a village to raise a child, right? So
Yeah.
I have many mentors, many people that I look up to and I learned a lot from. But if I may take the leadership part, I'm very impressed by Jacinda Ardern. Do you
Yeah.
know her?
Yeah,
Because
I know of her. I don't know Jacinda
you
personally.
know of her, because I
Yeah.
found out not everybody knows about her. So that's why I'm telling it here. Because she shows that leadership, that you can be a leader through empathy and being autonomous and compassion. And I think that's
Yeah.
incredibly strong. But the other thing which is very strong and which I think shows real leadership is that she knew when to step down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's hard.
And I
That's
think
hard.
that's a theme that is very important in the tech world, in the political world, society. I think there's a lot of leaders that can learn from that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How about your tech inventions? Which one makes you the most excited and which one makes you the most concerned?
Okay, so if I bring it down to, let's say, the environment of the textile industry, what I'm very excited about is a project that we're going to join with the European Union about biomolecular tracing. Molecular tracing, very difficult word,
Yeah.
but it basically means you can trace biomaterials where it's really coming from. So we
Wow.
use a lot of wool in our yarns, but we don't know where it comes from exactly, because as I mentioned in the beginning, it comes from all sides, it's spun together, it travels the world. And with this technology, you can actually trace back from which farm and which sheep the wool came from. So talking about radical
That's
transparency,
incredible.
I
Yeah.
think that's amazing. So I'm very curious how this project is going to be.
That's incredible. What about what's the flip side? What makes you most concerned right now? What kind of tech is keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I took this one broader than just tech.
Sure.
For me,
Sure.
the biggest concern I have is the fact that we're lowering our ambitions on the environmental impact at
Yeah.
every stage at this moment in
Yeah.
the world. So that's my biggest concern.
Definitely, definitely. And then in terms of collaboration, if you could collaborate with any person, designer, company in the world, who would it be and why?
It would be with all my friends at other textile companies,
Okay.
because I think that together, only together, we can really make the big impact. So if we all stop producing on stock for projects, which is possible because lead times are very long, we can make an incredible impact on the environment. So I
Absolutely.
invite all other textile companies to join me in this mission.
I mean, some of the things you said about on-demand production earlier, I mean, it was mind-blowing. Absolutely. So just solving for that and getting together and saying, hey, how can we sort of unify and work together on this, I think would be huge. Well, that wraps us up. This has been a fantastic conversation, Mijke. This is, I mean, honestly, like the work that you're doing, kind of weaving the future of sustainable textiles, to use the metaphor there.
Knitting.
And yeah, knitting. There we go. Knitting.
Knitting the future of textiles.
Exactly. It's really impressive. And we've not addressed this issue on our pod. So I'm hoping that our listeners really enjoyed it. And we'll, if you got more guests to suggest in this area, happy to bring colleagues and friends of yours on to dig into this topic a bit more. But this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm with Mijke, who's the CEO of BYBORRE. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining. Folks who are listening, please leave a review, give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring on more amazing guests like the CEO of BYBORRE here, Mijke. And thank you again for joining the pod.
Thank you.